The briefing document said to bring nothing that could complicate the room. I have been a diplomatic attaché for 31 years. I have sat in rooms where the air recyclers smelt like sulfur, and the chairs were designed for bodies with 4 knees. I know what nothing that could complicate the room means. Leave the sidearm, the translation tablet, the flag pin with the sharp backing, anything that might be scanned and flagged by the host delegation's ceremonial apparatus. It does not technically say anything about a cat. Fen had come with me to 11 postings over 9 years. He had crossed 4 transit gates, survived decontamination protocol twice, and once sat in the overhead rack of a diplomatic shuttle for 6 hours, while an honor guard of armored Vrethkai stood at rigid attention in the seats below and absolutely did not look up. He weighed 6 kilograms. He had a face like a slightly disappointed judge. He traveled in a soft-sided carrier, dark green canvas, brass zipper, pulls, and was, for customs purposes, listed as a support animal under General Accord Provision 7, which covers non-weaponized biological companions in treaty contexts. Nobody had ever challenged the provision. Nobody had thought to. The Meihari Compact had been operating for the equivalent of 412 standard years. 41 civilizations had entered the Compact's session process. 40 had come out with binding agreements. The one that hadn't had, according to the briefing document, simply ceased to exist as a functioning polity before the second session could be scheduled, which the Compact's record keepers logged as a withdrawal. Their chamber on Veth Station was a long oval room with walls the color of old bone. The ceiling curved low at the edges and opened in a clerestory strip above the central table, letting in light bounced in through a system of mirrors. The Meihari found artificial light philosophically unsatisfying. There were 8 of them seated across the table. They were tall, narrow-faced, skin the color of pewter, and eyes that caught the mirror light, and held it a half-second longer than eyes should. Their lead facilitator, Assessor Vrene, had introduced herself at the door with a gesture that involved both hands and a slight forward tilt of the head, and had not looked at me since. She was looking at our lead envoy, Ambassador Chidiose. I was second seat. My job was to watch, take notes, and not speak unless spoken to. Fen was under the table. The carrier sat between my feet, zipped to the mesh panel so he had air and a line of sight. He'd eaten before we arrived. He was, when the session opened, curled in the back corner of the carrier with his chin on his paws and his eyes at something between open and closed. The particular expression of a Maine Coon who has assessed the situation and found it beneath active attention. The Apex reader was introduced after the opening protocols. Assessor Vreni explained it, via the translation feed, as a ceremonial instrument of the Compact, not a weapon, not a scanner in any adversarial sense, but a means of establishing the standing of all presences in the chamber. Before a binding session could proceed, every entity in the room would be catalogued. Category and standing would be assigned. The session could then open on a foundation of known quantities. Ambassador O.C. nodded. Our delegation had been briefed on the reader. We had no objections. The reader was a flat disc, roughly the size of a dinner plate, hovering at shoulder height in the corner of the room. It had been there since we arrived. I had assumed it was decorative. When Assessor Vren signaled it, it moved, not quickly, a slow drift, and began its sweep of the room. It filed the ambassador in under 4 seconds. I watched the output panel on the Meihari side of the table. The characters that appeared were not ones I could read. The color was a steady neutral blue, and Vren's expression didn't change. It filed me next, same blue, same 4 seconds. It moved to the 2 junior attachés on our side. Blue, blue. Then it reached the carrier under the table. It stopped. Not a pause, a stop. The slow drift ended. The disc hung at the edge of the table, its lower surface oriented toward the carrier's mesh panel. Fen, as best I could tell, had not moved. The output panel on the Meihari side shifted color. Not blue, something closer to amber. Assessor Vren's expression changed then. It was a small change, but I had spent 31 years watching faces in rooms like this, and I logged it. Her chin came up by perhaps 2 degrees, and the line of her mouth went from neutral to flat. She said something to the reader in Meihari. The translation feed caught it as classify, pending category, return assigned standing. The reader did not move. She said it again. The reader held its position. The amber on the output panel deepened. Then beneath it, a second line of characters appeared. The translation feed took a moment. It was working from a secondary vocabulary layer, and then it gave me category, standing, indeterminate, protocol, suspend. Fen yawned. It was a long yawn. He lifted his chin off his paws, opened his mouth to an uncomfortable degree, showed a ridge of small, very white teeth, and then set his chin back down and closed his eyes the rest of the way. The reader retreated to its corner. Assessor Vren did not speak for approximately 8 seconds. I counted. Ambassador Osi sat with his hands folded on the table. His expression was the same it had been when he walked in. Attentive, unhurried, the expression of a man who has been doing this for a long time and finds the current development interesting but not alarming. Vren said, in translated standard, "The compact session protocol requires that all presences in the chamber carry an assigned standing before a binding. Exchange may proceed. The reader's output for the entity beneath your secondary delegate seat is non-standard." Ambassador Osi said, "I understand. Compact has no precedent for an unresolved presence." "I imagine not," Osi said. "We will need to consult with the full compact historiographic record before we can determine how to proceed." "Of course," Osi said. "Take whatever time you need." Vrene looked at him. She looked at me. She looked for a long moment at the carrier under the table, where nothing was visible except a small dark shape and the faint rise and fall of it breathing. She said carefully, "May I ask the nature of the entity?" I said, because it was the accurate answer. "He's a cat." Vreni processed that through the translation feed. She said, "A companion animal." "Yes," I said, "from your planet, yes." She looked at the reader's corner. The reader had not moved since it retreated. Its output panel was still amber. "The reader has catalogued entities from 63 biological categories across 14 star systems," she said. "It does not fail to assign standing." "No," I said, "I expect it doesn't." There was a silence. Fen shifted position under the table. Not a dramatic shift. He rolled slightly onto one side, extended one rear leg, and settled again. The carrier's canvas made a small sound. Assessor Vren stood. The other 7 Meihari stood with her, the way a tide goes out. All at once, without signal, without sound, she said that the delegation would need to adjourn for a period of internal consultation. She did not say how long. She said that the chamber would be held for the Earth delegation during the consult, and that refreshment would be provided, and that she thanked us for our patience. She did not thank us for bringing the cat. They left through the door at the far end. It closed behind them without sound. Ambassador Osi looked at me. He did not say anything. He looked at the carrier under the table, and then at the reader in its corner, still amber, and then he picked up the water glass in front of him, and drank from it, and set it back down. "How long has he traveled with you?" he said. 9 years, I said. Osi nodded. "Good cat," I said. "He's a very boring cat." Osi looked at the reader. "Apparently not." The consult lasted 4 hours. Assessor Vren returned. She brought a document. It was not the document we had come to negotiate. It was a procedural instrument, a reclassification of Earth's diplomatic status within the compact's standing framework. The new category did not translate cleanly into standard. The closest the translation feed could manage was something like delegation of indeterminate companions, full accord protocol. Full accord protocol, Vreni explained, was the designation the compact reserved for delegations whose full character could not be assessed in advance. It entitled Earth to session rights, observer rights, and consultation rights, pending no further review, with no condition outstanding. Ambassador Osi accepted the document. He said thank you. He said we looked forward to the next session. We left Veth Station 6 hours later on a standard transit shuttle. Fen slept in the overhead rack. 2 junior attachés sat below him and did not look up. I filed the session report that evening, under incidents. I wrote, "Reader instrument registered, indeterminate standing for support animal, Maine Coon, male, 9 years. Session adjourned for compact internal consult. Full accord protocol extended to Earth delegation. No binding exchange conducted. Under notes." I wrote, "Preview Provision 7 for applicability to subsequent sessions." I did not write anything else. There wasn't anything else to write. The Compact's historiographers, I was told later, spent 11 months updating their classification records. They added a new category to the reader's framework. The first new category in 60 years. Its designation translated into standard was something like Origin Class Unresolved. There were at the time 2 entries in it, Earth and Fen.